That's life, I guess. What's happening, guys? Back at you with another video. So we finally get the release of Joker Folie, the sequel to the first original Joker movie that came out in 2019. So over the weekend I went to go check it out. So what did I actually think about this movie? Now I'm basically sort of in the camp to where I feel like the first original Joker movie did not really need a sequel. That movie really didn't need a sequel, to where it feels like it's just a great standalone story going on in that movie, and I just don't see the reason why we need to get a sequel. But of course, money talks. We got a sequel. Now, I'm one that usually typically doesn't read or watch any reviews before going in to see a brand new blockbuster movie. But, I did try to stray away from reviews for this one. But, they kept popping up, and I didn't really necessarily watch any reviews, but like just some of the stuff that popped up, and I just read a few things here and there. And it kept saying how this movie was not a good movie, whole musical thing did not work for this movie and all that. And this was before I watched the movie, and like before going into the movie, I was just, seeing those little tidbits of reviews here and there. And I was thinking, well, I'm gonna go ahead and go watch this movie, give it a chance, let's see what happens. It can't be that bad, what, can it? Boy, was I wrong. And just the amount of discourse that this sequel was getting before its release, to where a lot of people were complaining that, complaining basically that it's going to be a musical. They went back and forth on it, saying, oh, this is a musical, this is not a musical. So what the hell was it going to be if they're going back and forth? And there's just a lot of discourse going on amongst the audience and fans and all that, saying how they didn't want this to be a musical, they were against it being a musical. And when it comes down to it, really, for me personally, I'm not against a good musical movie. There's plenty of good musical movies out there. I was kind of open to it. I was open to it. I was going to give this movie a chance if it was indeed a sequel, and see how it just tells that story and see what it could do with this whole musical aspect going on in the movie. I'm not against a musical, movie or anything like that, just as long as the music in the movie is actually good, or it elevates the story or pushes the narrative forward. And I just feel like this movie did not do that. When it comes down to it, the musical part and musical aspect of this whole movie was probably the main thing that really dragged this movie down for me. Like, a lot of times throughout this movie, we're getting a musical number like maybe every 10 to 15 minutes or so. And whenever you're actually getting interested, or the conversation about this, the conversation going on in the movie, or something's going on in the movie was getting a little interesting, they cut it completely with a musical number. And it was kind of frustrating a little bit to be able to finally get into something, kind of get, not necessarily a groove, but like finally get into something interesting, whether they're having a conversation or during his trial or something like that. But it just undercuts the, getting into those musical numbers, it just undercuts it, what happened before, right before that, or overshadows some of the things. And just how all the musical numbers basically came across as this whole fantasy world, daydreaming kind of concept, which is not unfamiliar to Joker, the character of Joker, as we've seen in the first original movie. He was kind of doing that. He was kind of going through those illusions, that daydreaming, that fantasy world type of stuff going on in the original movie that we kind of got here and there. So it's not out of the question, it's not unrelating to the character of Joker that we will get this sort of musical aspect, to where it was kind of that fantasy world daydreaming type of concept going on. So it was, but the musical numbers themselves were not interesting. The music wasn't good. I couldn't really get into it. There's maybe like one actual musical number that I wouldn't say genuinely like, but like genuinely it was kind of like, okay, that's not bad. That's at least a watchable, good kind of musical number. But that was it. Only one of those out of all of the ones that we got in this movie. And we got a whole lot of them in this movie. Like I said, it was like every 10 or 15 minutes we got like a musical number, and this whole musical number thing just completely dragged this movie down. It just undercuts the scenes before it, or overshadows them, and it just was not for me. Really, let me talk about some of the good things about this movie, and I want to talk about the technical stuff about this movie when it comes to like the filming, the cinematography, the way that it's shot, all those things different like that. All the technical stuff like that, set design, everything like that was all done really well. Everything like that was all done pretty well, and it looks good in the movie. And some other things that were good, of course, Joaquin Phoenix is still, bringing his brilliance as an actor to this character, playing this role and this character so well. It really is one of the highlights of the movie. I would say Lady Gaga is interesting as Harley Quinn, or as they call her in the movie, Lee. She's interesting as this character, but I just feel like when it comes down to like the second half, they don't do too much with her character. In the first half, she is very interesting, and she does give off this, this Harley Quinn type of vibes in a way that she's not like crazy or over the top like you've seen other actors playing the character before, or how you've seen the character in shows or other movies or animated series to where she's over the top or acting out crazy or anything like that. She doesn't. Lady Gaga does not play this role that way, but you do see those hints of she's living in this sort of illusional world, or she has those hints of craziness going on with her, but she's not like over the top or anything like that. And of course, she is amazing when it comes to the musical numbers. Even though I don't like the music, but she still is amazing in musical numbers because, of course, she's an amazing singer. So if you're a fan of Lady Gaga, I will say that if you're a fan of Lady Gaga, you're going into this movie for Lady Gaga, seeing how she does the musical numbers. She goes off in the musical numbers. So if you're a fan of Lady Gaga, you might enjoy that stuff. But to be honest, that's probably the only good, sort of good stuff I could talk about this movie. I was somewhat a little open to seeing how they could do this sequel, how they can sort of continue the story, and I was just going into this movie hoping for like a good overall story. Unfortunately, I did not get that. It feels like they were trying to say a lot, but nothing significant. There was a few spots here and there where not much happens. It kind of felt bland at times, and sometimes throughout the movie, it feels like it just flatlines and maybe a beat here, flatlines again, another beat. It kind of felt like that throughout the movie a little bit, to where, like I was saying, a couple spots here and there did feel a little bland. After, thinking about it a couple days after watching this movie, kind of sitting on it and seeing how I actually feel a couple days later, I could see those hints. I could see those things that they could have done that could have made this a little bit more interesting, or had those little interesting things if it wasn't undercut or overshadowed by the musical aspects of this movie and some other things going on in this movie. They could have done something a little interesting, like like dealing with the social commentary of society, dealing with this character of Arthur Fleck, where he is kind of struggling in this movie. He's dealing with his identity, like, is he the Joker? Is he not the Joker? Who is the Joker? Who does he want to be? But it doesn't spend enough time doing with that and dealing with that, because it just gets undercut by this whole musical aspect and all these musical numbers. So we don't get to spend enough time with it or really flesh things out too much. And when it comes to the relationship of Joker and Harley, or as they call her in the movie, Lee, it kind of does some... It doesn't do too many interesting stuff. There's like a hint of some intrigue here and there, but it doesn't do enough of it and doesn't do anything quite noteworthy. I was definitely curious about what they could be able to do with these two characters relationship wise, or how they were going to intertwine these characters together. And I was curious about the whole musical aspect, on how it kind of seemed like on paper it kind of seems like it might fit these characters in a way, but when it comes to the whole execution of it, it just does not deliver. To be honest, if they kept this as like just straight a story without musical numbers in it, like, I'm curious if there's a way like somebody can make chop up this movie, edit this movie to where the musical numbers are not a part of the movie, just have it as a straight story. It could have had something. I think it could have had something going on there to maybe it could have came out to at least somewhat a solid movie. I want to say very good, or not even as good as the first movie, but maybe if it didn't have the musical number, the musical numbers going on in this movie, or just had it as a straight story going on, then maybe it could have done something. I don't know. Like, I really want this movie to be good. Like I said, I was sort of against it having a sequel, but like they did a sequel, and I was like, okay, let's see what they could do with the sequel. I'm open to it. I'm gonna give it a chance, hoping for the best, hoping they could be able to turn something out good. Because I never want a movie to be bad. I never want to go to see a movie and it just ends up being bad, or I didn't like it or anything like that. I'm always going to a movie to give it a chance and hoping for the best. Unfortunately, this movie does not do that. It does not deliver. The execution is done poorly. And it's already been said before, like, this movie was really a movie that they didn't want to do. Like, Todd Phillips didn't really want to do a sequel. Joaquin Phoenix already said he didn't want to do a sequel. So it kind of... It's kind of a bad taste, to where it's like they're doing this sequel basically because the studio and producers, whatever, whoever, how big of a success the first Joker movie was, to where it was one of the only R-rated movies to ever make $1 billion at the box office. So they're, of course, they greenlight a sequel because the money talks. And they already said that, you know, Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix, they already said they didn't want to make a sequel. That first movie was a good standalone story. So, but, you know, they come back and make a sequel, of course, because pretty much have to. But just, it just feels like watching this movie, it just felt like there was like a hint of sabotage going on in this movie. Like, it felt like they were putting that little hint of sabotage to where they, of course, they didn't want to make the movie, so like they kind of sabotaged it a little bit to, you know, of course, they're going to end it off on maybe not the greatest of notes, so that they could, of course, close out the story. Won't have to make any more sequels after this, and they pretty much do that. The ending does. I can see the ending being very controversial when it comes to the ending of this movie. How people are probably not going to like it. A lot of people will not like it for sure. So I can see how they could do that. A little hint of sabotage going on probably in this movie. To be honest, this is a movie I probably won't watch again unless it requires, you know, it's required viewing for like an upcoming video or a ranking down the line or down the road, whatever. Maybe that'll be like the only time I actually ever watch this movie again. If you like the first movie, if you enjoyed the first movie, you know, like I like the first movie. I don't typically go back to rewatch it a whole lot. I've only seen it probably like a total of like 4 times, like once in theaters, once out of theaters. I watched it like 1 year later again, and then recently saw it a couple days ago, right before this movie. So it's not a movie I go back to rewatch a whole lot because it's just a hard watch, but it's still a very great movie. I think it's a very good movie, the first one. So if you actually like the first movie, I don't see you liking this one. The conversation of this movie is very interesting. Like, I've been seeing other reviews, I've been looking at what people are saying about this movie, and the conversation is very interesting. The majority of people are definitely not liking this movie, but there's actually not quite a large number of people, but there's quite some people out there. There's, you know, here and there's some people that come out and say like, oh, you don't get what they're trying to say, or this movie's actually not as bad as you think. And I would say that this movie is not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. It's still pretty bad. It's not good. I'm not going to go back to this movie to rewatch it. So the conversation around this movie is very interesting. It's just interesting to see what people come up with about this movie, the commentary about this movie, what they're talking about. Like I said, a lot of people don't like this movie already. I've been checking that out, but there's those people here and there that are actually coming to the defense of it. So it's kind of interesting. Conversation of it is interesting. The movie itself, not so much. And I will say this. Maybe down the line, I'm not going to say I would be surprised, but maybe down the line, many years from now, maybe people might come around. I'm not going to say that they will. I'm not going to say they will. They probably won't. But like, if it does happen, it's a possibility. Many years down the line, maybe some people will come around it. Maybe a couple more people will come around it. I can see that. If they actually watch the movie and like actually analyze it to what this movie was actually trying to do, maybe there might be some people that come around on it. Who knows? Maybe I will too down the line. Who knows? But I'm not saying as of right now, this movie is just not for me. This movie is not for me. It just does a lot of things that I did not like. And it's just a movie that I'm probably not going to go back to rewatch, at least not anytime soon. So yeah, this movie, I wanted to like this movie. I wanted it to be good, but fortunately, it does not do that. But that's life, I guess. But let me know down in the comments below if you went to go see Joker 2, Joker Folie à Deux, and let me know down in the comments below what are your thoughts on it. Like, I definitely like to hear people's thoughts on this. The conversation, like I said before, is very interesting surrounding this movie and what people think about it. But let me know down in the comments below what you thought about it. But that's going to do it all for this video. Hopefully y'all all enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe and turn notifications on so you know I post another video. Hope you have an awesome day. I'll see you on the next one.